What happens when emotional connection matters more than age? These films explore relationships that Hollywood usually avoids or turns into cheap drama. But instead of relying on controversy, they focus on loneliness, vulnerability, emotional healing, and the complicated reality of human connection. If you're looking for mature films that go beyond typical romance formulas, here are 10 realistic older woman, younger man movies that feel far more authentic than most Hollywood relationships. 1. Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. This intimate drama stars Emma Thompson as a retired schoolteacher who decides to confront years of emotional repression after losing her husband. She hires a young companion named Leo Grande, played by Daryl McCormick. But the story quickly becomes less about attraction and more about vulnerability, confidence, aging, and honesty. What makes this film stand out is how quiet and personal it feels. Most of the movie unfolds through conversation inside a hotel room, allowing every emotion to breathe naturally. Instead of relying on sensational storytelling, it explores body image, regret, emotional intimacy, and self-acceptance with warmth and maturity. The emotional realism is what makes it memorable. 2. Queen of Hearts. This Danish psychological drama starring Trine Dyrholm is intense, uncomfortable, and emotionally complex. The story follows a successful lawyer whose carefully structured life begins to collapse after she develops a forbidden relationship with her teenage stepson. Unlike films that glamorize dangerous relationships, this movie examines manipulation, emotional control, consequences, and social destruction with brutal honesty. It's a dark character study rather than a traditional romance. The tension feels frighteningly real because the movie refuses to simplify anyone involved. 3. Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Based on a true story, this emotional drama tells the relationship between legendary actress Gloria Graham and younger British actor Peter Turner. Annette Bening delivers an incredibly layered performance as Gloria, while Jamie Bell brings emotional sincerity to Peter's role. What makes the film feel genuine is how naturally the age difference fades into the background. Their connection grows through shared creativity, affection, humor, and companionship, rather than spectacle. The film also handles illness, aging, and devotion with remarkable tenderness. 4. Last Summer, directed by Catherine Breillat. This French drama follows a respected lawyer who risks everything after becoming emotionally entangled with her husband's teenage son. The film approaches the situation in a cold, observational style that feels deeply unsettling and psychologically realistic. Rather than pushing moral lectures or exaggerated melodrama, the movie studies obsession, denial, emotional conflict, and self-destruction with uncomfortable honesty. The realism comes from how emotionally messy everything feels. But nobody behaves like a typical movie character. Instead, every decision feels flawed, impulsive, and painfully human. 5. A Door Set Against the Breathtaking Coastline of Australia. A Door tells the story of two lifelong best friends whose quiet seaside lives begin to change after emotional relationships develop across generations within their families. Starring Naomi Watts and Robin Wright, the film explores emotional attachment, loneliness, trust, and the blurred lines between comfort and dependency. While the premise may initially sound dramatic or exaggerated, the movie approaches its characters with surprising calmness and emotional maturity. What makes A Door stand out is the atmosphere it creates. The peaceful beaches, isolated homes, and quiet daily routines give the story a deeply intimate feeling. Instead of relying on sensational moments, the film focuses on emotional consequences and the complicated bonds formed between people who have known each other for years. Every character feels emotionally vulnerable in different ways, which makes their decisions feel more human and believable. The performances from Naomi Watts and Robin Wright add depth and realism to the story. Both actresses portray women dealing with aging, emotional emptiness, and fear of losing connection as life changes around them. The younger characters are also treated with emotional complexity rather than being reduced to stereotypes. Rather than presenting easy answers, Adore quietly examines how emotional isolation and long-term companionship can sometimes lead people into deeply complicated territory. That emotional honesty is what makes the film feel unexpectedly real. 6. Hello, my name is Doris. Hello, My Name is Doris is a heartfelt comedy drama that follows Doris, an eccentric woman in her 60s who begins developing feelings for a much younger co-worker after spending years emotionally disconnected from the outside world. Played beautifully by Sally Field, Doris is awkward, lonely, creative, and emotionally fragile in ways that feel deeply authentic throughout the film. What makes this movie so effective is how grounded it remains emotionally. Doris is not suddenly transformed into a glamorous movie version of herself overnight. Instead, the story carefully explores her loneliness, grief, insecurity, and desire for human connection. After spending much of her life caring for others and avoiding risks, she suddenly finds herself confronting emotions she no longer knows how to manage. The relationship itself is handled with surprising tenderness. Rather than turning the younger co-worker into an unrealistic fantasy figure, the movie keeps everything emotionally believable and restrained. Doris often struggles to separate fantasy from reality, and the film honestly captures how emotional longing can grow stronger with age rather than disappear. Sally Field delivers one of the most emotionally sincere performances of her career. She makes Doris feel relatable even during her most awkward moments. The humor throughout the film also feels natural and compassionate, rather than cruel. At its core, Hello, My Name is Doris is less about romance and more about rediscovering life, confidence, and emotional courage after years of isolation. Its honesty is what gives the story lasting emotional impact. 7. Notes on a Scandal. Notes on a Scandal is a tense psychological drama that slowly unravels into a deeply unsettling exploration of obsession, secrecy, emotional instability, and loneliness. Starring Judi Dench and Cate Blanchett, the film takes place within the strict environment of a London school, where hidden relationships and emotional manipulation begin to spiral out of control. What makes the movie so powerful is how psychologically realistic it feels. Rather than focusing only on controversy or public judgment, the film studies emotional desperation and unhealthy attachment with incredible intensity. Judi Dench delivers a chilling performance as Barbara, a lonely teacher whose emotional fixation on her younger colleague slowly becomes controlling and dangerous. Cate Blanchett brings equal emotional depth to her role, portraying a woman trapped between personal desire, guilt, fear, and social pressure. As the story unfolds, both characters become emotionally exposed in ways that feel uncomfortable but believable. The tension comes not from dramatic twists alone, but from watching emotionally damaged people make increasingly destructive choices. The film's cold atmosphere and sharp dialogue create constant emotional pressure. Every conversation feels loaded with hidden motives, insecurity, and manipulation. The realism comes from how ordinary the characters initially seem before their emotional instability gradually surfaces. Instead of offering easy moral lessons, Notes on a Scandal examines loneliness, emotional dependency, and personal collapse with remarkable honesty. It remains one of the most psychologically intense dramas centered around emotional obsession and human vulnerability. 8. White Palace. White Palace is an emotional drama that explores connection between two people, separated not only by age, but also by grief, class differences, lifestyle, and emotional baggage. Starring Susan Sarandon and James Spader, the film follows an unlikely relationship that develops between a wealthy young advertising executive and an older working-class waitress struggling through her own painful past. What makes the film feel realistic is its refusal to romanticize everything. Their relationship is messy, emotionally intense, and often uncomfortable. They argue frequently, struggle with insecurity, and face judgment from people around them. The age difference is never ignored, but it also never becomes the only thing defining their connection. Susan Sarandon gives a deeply human performance, filled with vulnerability, emotional strength, and frustration. Her character feels real because she carries emotional scars openly instead of hiding behind perfection. James Spader's character is equally complicated, dealing with grief and emotional confusion after losing his wife. The movie also explores social class with honesty. The differences between their worlds constantly create tension, especially when outside opinions begin affecting their confidence in the relationship. Yet despite these struggles, their emotional chemistry feels genuine throughout the story. At its heart, White Palace is about two emotionally damaged people searching for comfort, honesty, and connection during difficult periods of their lives. Its emotional imperfections are exactly what make the film feel authentic and memorable. 9. Chronically metropolitan. Chronically metropolitan approaches the older woman-younger man dynamic in a far quieter and more understated way than most films. Instead of building the entire story around controversy or emotional spectacle, the movie treats the relationship as simply one part of a complicated family and personal situation. That subtle approach is what makes the film feel surprisingly natural and realistic. The story centers on a young writer returning to New York City after years away, hoping to reconnect with people from his past while dealing with unresolved relationships and emotional tension. Within this emotionally complicated environment, an older woman quietly develops a meaningful connection with a younger man. The relationship is not treated as shocking or sensational. Instead, it becomes a source of emotional comfort and stability during a chaotic period in her life. What makes the movie work is its restraint. The characters feel like ordinary people carrying emotional exhaustion, regret, and loneliness rather than exaggerated movie personalities. Conversations feel natural, and the emotional conflicts are small but believable. The film understands that emotional connection often develops quietly through companionship and understanding, rather than dramatic declarations. The older woman-younger man relationship is portrayed with maturity and emotional balance. There is no exaggerated fantasy element attached to it. Instead, it reflects two people finding comfort in each other while navigating personal uncertainty. That grounded emotional realism gives Chronically Metropolitan a softer, more authentic tone than many films exploring similar themes. 10. The Mother, written by Hanif Qureshi. The Mother is one of the most emotionally raw and brutally honest films, exploring loneliness, aging, and emotional desire later in life. Starring Anne Reid alongside Daniel Craig, the film follows an older woman whose life changes dramatically after the sudden death of her husband. As she struggles with grief and emotional emptiness, she becomes involved with a younger handyman connected to her daughter's life. The film handles this relationship with remarkable realism. Instead of turning the story into fantasy or melodrama, it focuses on emotional vulnerability, shame, loneliness, and the deep human need for affection and connection. Anne Reid gives an extraordinary performance filled with emotional honesty. Her character is not glamorous or idealized. She feels like a real person confronting invisibility, aging, and emotional neglect after years of routine domestic life. Daniel Craig's character is equally flawed and emotionally complicated, which keeps the relationship grounded in realism. What makes The Mother especially powerful is its willingness to make viewers uncomfortable emotionally. The film refuses to provide easy emotional resolutions or simplified morality. Every interaction carries tension, awkwardness, longing, and emotional uncertainty. Rather than judging its characters, the movie quietly examines how loneliness and emotional isolation can push people toward complicated decisions. That emotional truthfulness is what makes The Mother feel deeply human and unforgettable. These films stand out because they avoid exaggerated fantasy storytelling and focus instead on emotional realism, personal conflict, loneliness, social pressure, human vulnerability, and complicated emotional connections. Whether romantic, psychological, dramatic, or introspective, each movie approaches the older woman, younger man dynamic with more maturity and emotional honesty than mainstream cinema usually allows.